Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Scorpio with a Libra rising. And I've done the opposite version of this. There will be similar themes, but we always have to look to the sun sign for what the person's basic intention and drive is in life. The rising sign is kind of a pale reflection of all of that because it's to me, it's more of a surface thing. It's, dealing with the person's appearance and mannerisms, but not necessarily their true intentions and their true aspirations. So sometimes you get sun and rising signs that are quite different from one another, and that will also exacerbate this, where the person is really a lot different than how they're presenting themselves. And I would say this is an example of this because the presentation is Libra, and it's kind of this a beautifully wrapped gift that, Libra is ruled by Venus. If somebody is ruled by Venus, meaning that their rising sign is either Libra or Taurus, they can be physically attractive. I'm Taurus rising myself. But the thing is that depending on the sun sign, you can see quite a disparity with that because the person isn't going to necessarily represent what it is that they are presenting. In my case, my sun is in Sagittarius. And with that rising sign of Taurus, it forms an inconjunction. So it is quite different, uh, quite, I was going to say contradictory, but that doesn't even touch what it is. With When you're talking about Scorpio and Libra, I would rather speak about the similar goals before talking about what's different because I think that that can indicate what the person is trying to go after. So with Scorpio, we're talking about somebody that wants to really dive deep and they want to merge with someone. I do believe that a lot of Scorpios want love, just like Libra, but it's coming from a different place. It's coming from almost like an obsessive place, uh, especially if it's a lower vibration of what Scorpio represents. At the higher level, it can, I think it can even be quite selfless, but that is not something that all Scorpio people express because a lot of times, due to trauma, the person kind of limits themselves because they're afraid of being hurt. I would say, though, of the two signs, that Libra is the sign that really craves relationship and does so in a very straightforward way. So, somebody who has Libra rising will tend to, especially when they're younger, I would say, want to have one relationship after the other, serial monogamy. Not necessarily somebody that wants to sleep around or have brief flings. It depends, it depends on different factors. I'm just talking about Libra as a sign. I'm not talking about with the sun in Scorpio because I definitely do not think that somebody with that combination would want to have flings. Um, Scorpio people take their affections very seriously, but there could be a tendency with Libra rising when the person is younger to be more in that energy and more, almost like more detached, because the air signs are detached. They're not overtly emotional like water signs. And of all the water signs, Scorpio is the most intense. It's also a fixed water sign. So it's very easy for a Scorpio person to get fixated or obsessed on somebody. And even if they're not a stalker, they could still be someone who finds it hard to shake off someone. So, like going from one relationship to the next is just not typical for people who have the sun in Scorpio. They tend to be much more devout about their love for someone. And if they happen to break up with that person, even if they feel compelled to be the one to break up, they're going to feel it for a long time to come. They're not going to be blasé about it. So with this combination, the person may be physically attractive and they may use their looks to get what they want, which is the Scorpio type of relationship, like I stated. So they may come across as very fun-loving, sociable, these are Libra qualities, and the person who is attracted to them, and there may be a lot of people who are attracted to them because their physical appearance may, in general, be very beautiful or handsome, has no idea what they're getting themselves into. Now, you do have to look at the moon sign to gain more information about this, because if the moon is in air or maybe even earth, the person may be more detached overall, and they may be less inclined to be totally emotionally um, sucked into some kind of relationship. They might be much more inclined to be detached, and therefore you could say, have more of a balanced outlook on what relationships are all about. So it could be something that isn't so big of a deal. You have to look to see what else is going on. But the person, there's a certain Machiavellian streak in Scorpio people. Scorpio people can excel in chess. They can be ninth dimensional chess players because they have that natural tendency to kind of plot their moves and anticipate other people's actions. Scorpio people are very good, almost scary studies on other people's motivations. They're just natural psychologists. And the unscrupulous Scorpios can use that against people as a form of mind manipulation, where they are psyching people out and acting like they are, trying to manipulate people, knowing what people's weak spot is. And all the while, they're not sharing of themselves. So they're kind of in this position where they're doing all of the whatever you want to call it, the chess moves. And so this kind of person can use those qualities to manipulate somebody into a relationship while also using physical kinds of things. I said physical kinds of things. I didn't know how to put that. Using their physical appearance as the bait. So a woman, I was going to say like somebody who's a black widow spider who, kind of draws her prey into, kind of sucks them in. Or is it should I have said the Venus flytrap? Maybe something like that, the Venus rising flytrap. And the real goal isn't necessarily power, although the lower nature Scorpios might be seeking to control the person, that's what their primary reason for being in relationships. But that would really have to be more of a narcissistic personality disorder, somebody who is really broken inside and doesn't have feelings, and they're just out to control. There are people out there like that who exist, so I'm not saying that isn't a possibility, but that isn't necessarily what I would say is the average person. I think that the average person can be more like wanting love and maybe there's a part of themselves that doesn't feel that they can get it just in a normal way. They have to use some manipulation, so they use their physical appearance. Would a woman sleep with a man early on if they have this combination? That's a good question. I normally would say no because Scorpios take sex very seriously, but there might be exceptions to that rule, especially if that person has experienced sexual abuse. They may feel like, hey, what's done is done. Now I'm going to turn the tables. And yeah, and I could see even like that stripper thing I've talked about, the Venus square Pluto aspect or the Venus opposing Pluto aspect, or even the conjunction between Venus and Pluto. So look to that in your chart to see if you have that as well, because then this could be more likely where the person uses their physical appearance as a bait. I was going to say bait and switch, but it's really like they may use it for all sorts of purposes, for money. And I'm not just saying straight up prostitution, but maybe in some cases, yes. But I'm speaking about that kind of nebulous area, um, like sugar daddies, sugar mamas, um, or just any kind of relationship that is very kind of like tit for tat, where one person is being the arm candy and kind of propping up that older person's self esteem. I guess it doesn't have to be like an older person, but usually they're the ones who have more money and they're going to be the trophy partner. Um, and some people may say, hey, I'm down for that. I want to have this lavish lifestyle. Um, so sometimes, see, because Scorpio can be about power. And so anything that Libra rising does can be the sort of hook. And Libra is a sign that tries to be very agreeable, gracious. So a Libra rising person can have the social graces nailed down and really like charm the pants off of anybody. Sometimes literally, I guess you'd say. Um, but there can sometimes be a phony quality, I feel, with Libra when they're in that slick mode. There's like a slick quality of Libra, like a glossy uh, quality. And this is that surface, which is the appearance and the mannerisms that they use. Again, sometimes maybe when they were growing up, they were in a traumatic family, but for some reason they had to look good. Uh, Perhaps they had a parent who was in a position of authority, position in the community that was revered, like a pastor's child, a politician's child, where they're always being scrutinized. So they had to be like the perfect children. And they grow up like that, having this veneer of being very um, beautiful on the surface, polished on the surface, but it could be messy underneath and complicated underneath. So if you have that dynamic within yourself, really look at that, because there can be, I feel like there can be a real split that occurs at some point if the person goes through life and does not acknowledge this sharp dichotomy, between who they really are and the image that they are projecting. And this can also relate to the way that the person, what the person accepts from other people. You might have this in your personal relationships. You may have a difficulty in saying no, and you fear disapproval. Usually I wouldn't say that about Scorpio people, because they tend to be very they actually tend to be quite blunt sometimes. And especially if you have Mercury and Sag, you're going to be definitely blunt. But I mean, Scorpios don't pull any punches, right? So that's not usually an issue, but sometimes it can be if there are other competing influences. And that can lead a person to um, put themselves out there trying to be everything to everybody. And it just like doesn't work. Eventually, the facade crumbles. And it could be when you turn a certain age, maybe when you turn 30 and you're in your first Saturn return and everything seems harder in life and not as bright and shiny, or maybe it's in menopause, middle age, menopause, whatever, you know. Um, so that's that. And then looking at the type of professions that you might excel in, I definitely think a therapist or anybody who is helping other people transform their lives. Scorpio rules that eighth house of transformation. And the rising sign really isn't so much about your occupation. Um, I'm trying to see like your, it could be that your midheaven is Cancer, and that would be something with maybe teaching, for instance, working with children, if that's your midheaven. Um, but in any case, you're just somebody who is very capable of going through a lot of changes in your life. I'm talking about deep changes, like almost like different person. I wouldn't say different personalities, but different lives within one life, like the cat with nine lives, because Scorpio is all about transformation. Scorpio, the death card is connected to Scorpio, and that's because the eighth house that Scorpio rules is the house of death, but it's also the house of rebirth. So, you know, shedding one skin and growing another one, and being able to um, say goodbye with kind of a ferocity to the past and not like clinging to the past. So, um, being a therapist, being a shaman, shaman is a big one. If you have your moon in water or earth, I think that you would probably really take to that like a duck to water, pardon the pun, because the earth and the water signs, to me, they're very much a part of, they're very much connected to the physical world, obviously, due to the elements that they represent. You know, the air and the fire are more ethereal or intangible, but water and earth are not. They can be held in one's hands. So, um, anything transformational, relationship, like a counselor for relationships, you know, thinking about the Libra energy, or even, you know, another thing that can happen too is if a person has some issues with their appearance, like even a beautiful person, a woman, or you know, I guess a handsome man. I think women tend more towards body dysmorphia, where they think that they're ugly when they're beautiful. And I think even like an eating disorder like anorexia can be a form of body dysmorphia because a person has a distorted view of themselves, and they can say, oh my God, I'm obese, and they weigh 90 pounds. They just don't see it. And they have like a very skewed, I don't know which word it is, skewed way of seeing themselves, a distortion. So, If you have suffered from anything like that, you can be the greatest help to somebody else because you've been there and done that. And people can get inspired by your transformation. So anything where you're talking about a transformation that occurred is going to be wonderful. Even a physical trainer, this could be true. Even a makeup artist or a, like with Libra, a beautician, being, having this vision of someone, how they would look. Oh man, you'd look great with short hair, to a woman with, you know, hair down to her butt, and saying, you would look great with short hair. And this is going to change your life. You're going to see life in a whole new way. And in terms of love, I've already spoken on it. I would say that this combination should definitely um, learn how to embrace solitude. Because when you're younger, you may really seek out people, social situations. And the Scorpio is actually very content to be alone, being alone. It's the Libra energy that is much more wanting that, even just one person that they can bounce ideas off of. Libra loves that partnership angle. They don't like to do things alone. But again, this is your rising sign, so I'm not saying that this is going to be the biggest influence on your life. But when you're younger, when you're in your 20s and younger than that, you may be particularly prone to this type of behavior. I remember, I don't know if I would, I don't know if I would say the same thing about Taurus being ruled by Venus and me having Taurus rising, because Libra rules the seventh house of committed partnership. So it has a definite connection with partnership beyond the Venus angle. It's really funny because I remember growing up, and it wasn't anything like overt, like, oh, if you're alone, it's like you're pathetic or anything. And I was always very independent. But I remember this one time when I was standing in line at a movie theater, and I was about 16 years old. And I ran into the minister of my church. And this man, I think he might have been a little eccentric, I'm not sure. But he saw me and he's like, oh, how are you and everything. And I said, I told him I was with my mom because she was off, I don't know, buying the tickets or something. And he said to me, he goes, sure, sure. Like he was trying to imply that I was making that up, like I was really alone. And I think about that and I think how bizarre that is. But I remember a couple of years after that, I remember one day going to some kind of restaurant, but it was kind of a casual place, so I don't even know if there was a wait staff. I might have just had to go up and get my food. And I remember eating alone and feeling very um, awkward and kind of like I was in the spotlight, like self-conscious, okay? And I look back on that now, and that is the most bizarre thing that I can ever think of, because I am alone a lot and I don't care. I have a partner, but he and I are not always doing things, and I'm alone, going to a cafe practically every time that I do. And it's like, just to think about, like, oh my God, I'm alone. I mean, it's nuts. But you might have that tendency very deeply embedded within yourself. And some of you right now may be laughing, thinking, oh yeah, I am kind of like that. And it's okay. I mean, I'm not saying that to ridicule anybody, because it is something that for some reason our society has really indoctrinated people about. And it's totally silly, and it's totally necessary to learn how to enjoy your own company. Keep your own company, but enjoy it. Keep your own counsel, I guess is the saying. But really enjoy being by yourself. If you can't enjoy being by yourself, if it makes you uncomfortable, if you always feel like you need company, then that is definitely something to look at, because in relationships, it can have you settling for less, and it just isn't worth it, but also for your own personal development. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.